The meeting will come back to order. All right, before we get on to public comment, our district attorney's here and he'd like to speak to enforcement issues.
Thank you very much, Dan May, District Attorney. That is one of the things I wanted to ask the board about, is what's your expectation of how law enforcement is tied into this, and what's your expectation about how the District Attorney's Office may be tied into the enforcement of all these different rules that are being proposed today? Is there an expectation?
It's our expectation would be that the district attorney's office does what the district attorney's office always does, and follows the laws and operates in the way that you're mandated to operate. Same with the sheriff's office. Madam County Attorney, do you have something to say about that?
I do. I think earlier on when this process was going forward, I had announced the agreement that was reached between the law enforcement agencies in the Pikes Peak region, specifically El Paso County, and also the district attorney's office. We had had several meetings where we have agreed on basically like a 4-step process that I previously outlined that I don't know the exact meeting, I apologize. But when we outlined that was a process that the district attorney's office had agreed to also. And that is the framework that we have been working under with the law enforcement.
That's one of the reasons I'm up here today. Diana May, the county attorney, has indicated to me that it was her expectation that we have a 4-step process where the Department of Health does the investigation. They first give a verbal warning, a written warning, a cease and desist, and the last resort would be if we look at criminal charges. And quite frankly, I think there's a lot of things in certain cases between cease and desist and criminal charges. We shared a series of emails back and forth where Diana May indicated that she felt if there was probable cause, I assume after the cease and desist, to believe that a crime had been committed, that it was her expectation that we would be bringing criminal charges. And she indicated that my statements to the Board of County Commissioners led the Board of County Commissioners to believe that same thing, that after we get past that 3rd step, that if there's probable cause, that I will be bringing criminal charges or law enforcement will get involved, give a ticket and bring criminal charges in all these cases. That's not my expectation. But I don't know if that's what the Board of County Commissioners' expectation is. And I've got the emails if you'd like to see them. That concerns me if we're going to that step and based on a probable cause standard.
Yeah, Commissioner Vanderwerf, you want to take that one on? Sure. Well, sure, I'll get to you in just a sec, Mr. Vice Chair.
Well, in this particular case, if I understand correctly, that is not your expectation, and I think I would defer to your expectations. You're the district attorney.
Yeah.
And
Commissioner Gonzalez.
And if I could just say one thing, if we're happy to look at the position of the district attorney if the district attorney's office is changing their position from the prior agreement, because that was the agreement that was reached with his office, and we are always happy to sit down and have a dialogue if his position has changed.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a collaborative process. I think we want to work with our community. We want to work with our businesses. It's a dialogue. As we've done, I think we've demonstrated we're trying to educate on what makes sense for practicing and following the guidance that has been coming, that it's been handed out. Absolutely, we don't want this to be a punitive thing. We want this something that educates and gets people to do what's right. And so, I mean, that falls on you and the sheriff. But clearly, we've been wanting to work with our community, work with the businesses, and should not be punitive in any way. This should be collaborative and working for the best interests of all the residents.
Well, I'll tell you, not one of us has advocated for anybody being charged with a crime as a result of anything that's happened related to COVID. In fact, I think we've said nothing but citizens are doing a great job in this. But I tell you, our expectation for you as community members is what everybody's expectation for you, and that's to handle the criminal justice issues that are facing El Paso County. Now, probably not handling civil issues that are facing El Paso Paso County, not really your purview there. Your job is to handle criminal justice issues, Title 18 in the code, maybe some other criminal provisions. And I don't think our expectation changes from that. We're, as community members, we expect you to do what you're charged with doing.
The other thing is, again, it was told to me that the Board of County Commissioners had an expectation that we would be doing this based on probable cause, and I'm not sure the board understands.
Who told you that? Where did that come from? Who told you that the Board of County Commissioners had an expectation to do, or had an expectation for you to do or not do something?
Diana May.
Oh, Ms. May?
And Mr. May, I think if you wish to try to misinterpret any of my words, maybe you want to provide to the board the actual emails. The email at all did not indicate that this was an agreement that your office agreed to with the Department of Public Health and all law enforcement agencies in this area. This was fueled by the public health asking for collaboration with law enforcement in your office, which your office participated in. And as you're aware from all the email correspondence, this specifically relates to the process that the Department of Health has requested. And as we've previously stated in meetings, from not just the Department of Health, but from a law enforcement perspective, the goal is not to criminally prosecute individuals. The goal throughout this has been to gain voluntary compliance, which thankfully, due to the hard work of the Department of Health, they have been able to gain voluntary compliance, sometimes in coordination with law enforcement. But I just want everyone to be clear, there has not been any criminal summonses issued. We've not had to go to the final step of the process that was agreed upon by all law enforcement in this district, including your office. If, again, there is something that you wish to change on the previously agreed upon process, we are happy on behalf of the Department of Health to sit down and have that dialogue with you if that's something that you want to readdress. Thank you.
Mr. May?
And I guess what I'm hearing your position is not necessarily what, I don't think I've ever committed to filing charges on probable cause. And I'm concerned that the board doesn't understand what probable cause is. It's a legal term that's used. Does the board know what probable cause is?
I think we understand what probable cause means.
Tell me what your expectation of
I think we understand what probable cause means. We're not mentioned in this email at all. Commissioner Gonzalez?
It says that
Commissioner Gonzalez?
I would just concur. This was not, we did not state this. So the expectation, as has been repeatedly stated by me, is this falls under the purview of
my
VA.
expectation is the same as what you put out there, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Okay, right.
In terms of what you said earlier, and I think that's what I've communicated to the board.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever used the word probable cause. And I'm back to, do you know what probable cause is?
Yeah, again, our expectation is that you're going to do your job. That's it. Holy mackerel.
Probable cause, quite frankly, under the law is a 50-50 proposition, if the board isn't aware of that. It's a probability. And so I'd be arresting people and doing charges on 50-50 possibility crime was committed, 50-50 possibility this person's doing that. We've never acted on that in my office since I've been DA, and actually I've worked under every DA since 1982, I think, and we've never used that as a charging. So I'd be surprised if I was on the record telling this commission that we are going to be charging people based on probable cause. I want people to know that this is a last resort. And I think that was the expectation that both the Department of Health, myself, Dr. Kelly, when he's been here, I've agreed with all of his statements. We feel this is a voluntary compliance. We feel our citizens have done very well. And the absolute last resort would be ratcheting this up to a criminal level. Once you ratchet it up to a criminal level, quite frankly, you get like what you had down in Dallas, where now someone's given a ticket that's a crime. Someone who feels like they're not complying in the courtroom, all of a sudden, boy, you're going to follow my orders. The next thing you know, someone's going to jail for violating what can be very technical violations. You've gone through a number of violations today on the what restaurants will do. It is not my expectation law enforcement is going to be going in and giving tickets for every single item in here that isn't being processed. Quite frankly, I can say in the restaurant industry, I think it's different than some of the others. I have told Ms. May that we will be looking at these on a case-by-case basis, that we will be looking as a last resort. We will be looking for every other possibility that we can get before we get to that, because once you ratchet it up to criminal, it's a whole new matter. And quite frankly, you're labeling someone as a criminal for the rest of their lives once we get to that point. And it can cause more dangerous situations than it can get us out of. In the restaurant area, I think there are other enforcement mechanisms. I will say there are certain things I don't necessarily agree with Governor Polis on. I think there's some things that he's handled extremely well in this crisis that we're in. He announced Monday that when he was looking at the case up in Castle Rock, he asked that law enforcement not be involved, that criminal tickets not be given. I talked to George Brockler, that is his jurisdiction up there. He agreed with that position, and I agree with that position. Restaurants are unique, that a number of them have liquor license, and so you can go in and the government can control situations that are dangerous through the liquor license. Restaurants are unique that they get licensed also, and so the Department of Health can come in and take away their ability to do business, and that's exactly what happened in Castle Rock. I thought that was the exact appropriate way to handle that, and so generally in a restaurant, I don't see law enforcement or my office involved ever, unless there's some real extreme. I'm not going to say there's no extreme situation. I wouldn't say they're willfully trying to injure people, that it is now time for us to step in and we can do something that can't be done through other processes in the system. I think it's wrong to threaten that way. I don't want people to feel threatened that we are going to criminally put people in jail for 1.5 years. I've heard people say that. That is not our goal. Our goal, our community is being very responsible. We are seeing our numbers coming down because of that. I don't want people to live under a threat that I can go to jail for 1.5 years because I shake somebody's hand, or I give somebody a hug, or I do some violation. There may be the extreme situation outside of the restaurant business, and we'll look at them case by case, but it is our intention, and I just want to say that we are not going to be doing it on probable cause. We will be doing it on that there is firm evidence. We are going to keep the independence to where others are not dictating to law enforcement when we should or shouldn't, but in the appropriate situation, we'll look at it. But I think it's going to be the extreme rare, and if there's a different expectation by this board, I'd sure like to know that, because again, we are all part of this community, and I think the restaurant business is too. I feel that in my conversations with Dr. Kelly, we've always been on the same page. He has very much indicated he wants everything to be done voluntarily. But if there are different expectations, I'm open to that. I see someone standing behind me, and maybe there is.
Yeah, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. DA, I believe time for me. And I absolutely believe that never has any member of this board recommended raising to criminal levels. So I think we're actually agreeing with you. We want this to be educational, working with the community, making sure that it is not punitive in nature in helping out our community. So if that was a miscommunication, I just greatly, I've never mentioned enforcement because that does not fall under the purview of the county commissioners. But when I have spoken on this issue, it's always been about being collaborative with our communities and our businesses, and never have I believe none of my fellow member commissioners have ever mentioned anything about criminal, raising this to some sort of criminal level. So I just want to put that on the record.
And I'd say from clarification perspective, not only have none of us mentioned that, many of us have been on the record saying we don't think people should be criminally charged in this circumstance. So it's to be here for clarification today. I'm sorry that you haven't seen us mention that in previous meetings, as we've done numerous times before. I get that you're busy and don't get to watch all of our meetings, but certainly that's been outlined numerous times before. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I also concur with my co-commissioners' sentiments. Appreciate that you came down here and asked for a clarification. I support the position that you're taking on this, and I know that Susan Whalen has a comment. We've had several discussions about, and you're going to obviously elaborate on this, one of the primary interests of El Paso County Public Health that I very much appreciate is an interest in education first, right? To work with anybody that engages in a violation and have a conversation with them. This speaks very much to Commissioner Gonzalez's point about collaborating and cooperating and working with our community so that we can do this in a friendly atmosphere, working together on it. That is most definitely the kind of approach I have an interest in, and I imagine you have some comments to that point.
I would just like to kind of back up a little bit from the start of the emergency response, and then offer a general theme of education all throughout this response. So part of this response is organizing the Pikes Peak Office of Emergency Management, which we are connected to all of our municipalities within that, and we have routine briefings, and they used to be daily, and now they're not daily. But we check in with our law enforcement partners, our municipalities, and various other leadership, school districts, all of them. And as part of this process, as it relates to the public health orders, that is something that is new to public health. We know public health, and we know how to educate, and we know how to explain the why behind what we're doing. And all throughout this emergency response, we have focused on education, not only the comments of the commissioners, but also of Dr. Kelly, our medical director. I mean, that has been the general theme, that personal responsibility, we focus on education, and as a last resort, that it would go to some type of enforcement. And Dan May, and I think it was the last meeting that we were at, you had asked me what is the status on complaints and cease and desist and those kinds of things. And we have only had one situation, and out of the over 1,000, where we had to have a conversation, and then after we had a conversation with a certain business, they scaled down, and then the public health order came out, and then they're open in a couple of days. But I want to say that the reason why we're successful is because of relationships and partnerships. So we focus on that, and you heard Mr. Howard and others talk about the relationship that they have with public health. I want to assure folks that as part of these conversations with Diana May and Lori Seago, it is always focused on education, and coming that from very different angles. There's online platforms for education, and there's also call centers with education, but we heavily focus on the why and the education, and overwhelmingly people take personal responsibility serious, and they do the right thing. So I wanted to emphasize that there has been a process where we do check in with law enforcement. That's not my background. District Attorney's Office has had representatives as part of those check-in meetings to establish the process in which we were using. And I think as part of this emergency response, we always need to refine what we're doing. Every aspect, that's part of an emergency response, where we look at what we're doing, what we've done. As we learn, we refine our processes. And so I appreciate the conversation, but I also want you to know, as the public health director, first and foremost, everything we do is education.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. I think from day one, I've said I think this is an educational process, and actually I'm very proud to say that El Paso County and Teller County have not given out a single ticket yet. And I think that's something again, speaks to the voluntariness of our community. I will say the email I've sent you does cut out a couple paragraphs. I'm more than happy to share the entire emails with you. The other paragraphs dealt with a restaurant in El Paso County, and I didn't think it was appropriate to put up the discussions that were being had between our offices on a particular restaurant, but this was the general portion.
All right, we're going to open it up to public comment now. If you'd like to speak on this matter, please come down and